Greetings from the Visitors Radio broadcast booth from Miller Park in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm Greg Hofer. My next guest is a graduate of Southern Methodist University, a Katie Award winner in 2003, the former pre- and post-game host for the Texas Rangers, a Philadelphia Air Award winner in 2007, 2008, the Sportscaster of the Year in Pennsylvania in 2010. He now enters his 11th year in the broadcast booth for the Philadelphia Phillies, his 10th as the lead radio voice. He is Scott Franzke. Scott, thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You grew up in Dallas, Texas, is where I want to start at the very beginning. Other than really hot, how was it growing up in Texas?
It was great. I love Texas. I miss it. It's a good place to live, easy place to live. You can park anywhere you go, which is a bit of a change of pace from a little different in Philadelphia. But yeah, it's like I said, it's home. I miss it.
I assume you were a Texas Rangers fan then, growing up as a kid?
Yeah, big Rangers fan. Followed all the sports, but got to be a big Rangers fan, middle school, high school.
Now, that was a fun era for the Rangers. Now, they didn't win a lot of championships, didn't win a lot of games, but they had some guys that were really good players. Pete O'Brien, Pete Incaviglia, Ruben Sierra, Oda B. McDowell, Bobby Valentine was the manager, Bobby Witt, Jose Guzman, Charlie Huff. Who was your favorite growing up?
Well, I think really early on, probably somebody like Buddy Bell. That was early. And then later, Jim Sundberg. He was kind of the fan favorite for everybody. But there were a lot of good players. I mean, when they started to really, kind of go to that next level, just before the ballpark opened, the last few years of the old Arlington Stadium, they brought Nolan Ryan in. Rafael Palmeiro, Julio Franco. They had a lot of guys there that were fun to watch. I mean, they could thump a little bit, and they always had trouble getting that pitching going, but they could sure swing the bats.
Now you attend W.T. White High School. Did you play any sports?
Played a little bit of baseball, but had kind of gotten out of it. Had gotten out of sports in general, and then try to get back in as a sophomore or junior. You're pretty well behind the curve, so I knew my future would not be on the field.
Now, speaking to that, if you talk to a lot of people in this industry, broadcasting and other aspects of it, they always talk about, well, I didn't have the physical talents, I didn't have the gifts to play, but I wanted to be involved. Is that kind of the path, obviously, the same
Absolutely
for you?
Not. I didn't, honestly, this kind of happened, along the way. I went to school and I was interested in music, and I worked in a recording studio. I was more interested in that stuff when I was coming out of high school, and got into college, was a sort of a generic radio, TV, film major, and started writing for the student newspaper at SMU, and that's kind of when when I first sort of made the connection that maybe there's a career to be had covering sports, but for a long time I thought it would be as a writer.
Huh. And you graduate in 1990, you go to SMU. What was it about SMU that appealed to you?
Well, I got in. For whatever reason, I had always liked SMU. I was back in the days of Eric Dickerson and Craig James, and they were
the Pony Express.
The Pony Express. So as a little kid, I kind of followed that and had a little mild connection there. But I don't know. For whatever reason, I kind of, as a kid, kind of locked onto it and was interested in going there from the time I was very young, and then ended up going there, and without necessarily an express reason, but it was a good school. It's a smaller school, and as it turned out, I thought it was very good for me to be at a smaller school.
Now, professionally, who are some of the bigger influences that you had in your career growing up? I know Eric Nadell's been there since 1981, sort of the Harry Callas of that area.
Well, Eric was, no question, a huge influence for me. Mark Holtz, who's passed away in the late 90s, and he and Eric teamed together on the radio, and that's what I remember, is listening to those guys do radio broadcasts. But there's some great announcers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, whether it's somebody like Brad Sham, or even before him, Frank Lieber, guys that did the Cowboys that were part of that. But I'd say Mark and Eric were the two biggest that I, listened to, and then ended up getting a chance to work with Eric later on. And he and I have remained friends, and I've really valued that that relationship and honestly the tutelage that I've gotten from him over the years.
So you graduated from SMU in 1994. One of your first jobs professionally after that is as a talk show host with the now defunct Prime Sports.
Yeah.
What was that like, being a talk show host?
Well, at first it was phenomenal. I mean, I just wanted to work and to get a job basically right out of school. It was about 3 months out of school that I was doing broadcasting, and because it was a startup, they were short-staffed from the beginning, and so I got hired, I think, to be just a producer with maybe some weekend work on the air, and that ended up expanding probably even before we went on the air just because of the need. I mean, they were programming 24 hours worth of live sports talk, so there were a lot of opportunities to practice, make mistakes, and try to get better. So I think that really helped me.
Now, as good as those professional experiences are and were, play-by-play is a completely different beast. Yeah. And you end up in Chicagoland. How do you end up broadcasting for the Kane County Cougars in 1999?
Well, Prime Sports Radio had let me go along with, I don't know, half the staff at some point. I want to say that was 97 maybe, and I started working weekends as a talk show host in Texas with the Rangers, and I would host their pre and post game shows, host a call-in show, and this kind of a scoreboard show type thing, and got to know Eric a lot better at that point. And he and Vince Cotroneo, who's now with the Oakland A's, they both suggested, look, if you want to try baseball, I had done events on the side, high school football, high school basketball, very little bit of baseball, but a little bit. And they said, look, if you want to do it, you're going to have to give it a real honest try. And that means you got to do it 6 days a week, 7 days a week. A, you might not like it. B, you might not be any good at it. So go find out. And that's, I ended up with a great, in a great spot in Chicago with Kane County.
And I want to talk about those 3 years. Now, 1999, your manager, Rick Renteria. 2000, there was a Texan on the team named Josh Beckett, a 20-year-old pitcher. And in 2001, you win the Midwest League Championship, 88 and 50. Those 3 years had to have been a lot of fun for you.
They were fun. I mean, at times I'm just feeling my way and finding my way as a broadcaster. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, those are experiences that are very unique. And for those of us who have done it, it's something that you hold on to and kind of cherish when you look back on it because, again, like I said, it's so unique to do something like that. And, I was a little bit older than the average, because I'd already worked. A lot of my, peers in the same league were fresh out of college, 22, 23 years of age. And so I felt a little bit more on the clock, I think, to make something happen. But it was a lot of fun, and they were good teams, and it was a good place to work.
Now, 2001, we talked about the Midwest League Championship that you won. On that team, some guy named Adrian Gonzalez and some guy named Miguel Cabrera. Had to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Had to be a lot of fun covering those two guys.
It was. That was obviously a good team record-wise, but it turned out to be a very good team prospect-wise. And that's one of the things I've always looked back on is when I was in the minor leagues, all those players believed they would be in the major leagues someday, and you realize just how far it is from low A ball to the big leagues. I could probably count on two hands, maybe three, the number of guys who spent a day in the major leagues, much less had great careers like Adrian or Josh or Miguel Cabrera. But yeah, those two guys were on that team, and also on the infield, Josh Wilson, who ended up playing professionally. He may still be playing for all I know. We see him every now and then. He's a AAA, 4A guy. He's always in the big leagues here and there. I've seen him many times over the year. And Josh Willingham, who I think just retired before last season, had a very good career. So that was their four-man infield, were those four guys. That's pretty impressive.
That's astonishing, to be real honest. Now, in regards to Adrian Gonzalez, he was the Midwest League MVP, 19 years old, #1 draft pick. The writing was on the wall. He was going to be a star. Miguel Cabrera, not so much. Granted, 18 is very young for that league, 17 when the season started. But was there anything that you saw watching him day in, day out that said, okay, this guy's going to be, for a period of time, the best right-handed hitter in the game, because his numbers were pretty pedestrian?
Yeah, I don't know that you ever think somebody is going to reach that kind of level, because obviously it takes a superior amount of dedication at every level, and to go up and to keep it going once you get to the big leagues. But I will say this, the Marlins were very high on him from the very beginning. He had signed for a lot of money. He was very young for his age in that league. He was playing shortstop every day. And you could tell that, he was a big, rangy kid at the time, hadn't filled out, hadn't gotten, into an adult's body quite yet. And once he did, obviously, things took off for him. But, I think you could see still, even at that age, there was pop in the bat. There were hands there that would play in the big leagues defensively. And again, he made it and has had, just a marvelous career.
Now, one of the other things you did while you're in Kane County is you covered the Summer Olympics in 2000. What was that experience like for you?
Well, it was great. It was kind of a last-minute thing. I was moonlighting in Chicago for an outfit called One-on-One Sports, again, a talk show outfit. And they said, hey, we got an assignment that we need covered. It's kind of out of left field, but would you be interested in going to the Olympics? And, I was like, well, yeah. Obviously, and
Sydney, Australia, not a bad place to go.
So I went to Sydney, and it's a beautiful city. It was amazing vibe in the city. People were so nice, and everybody was in a good mood. And I went to some events as a spectator, and it was just cool to see all the people from all the different countries, and they all had their rooting interests. But at the same time, there was that Olympic spirit that everybody was there for the same, fellowship, goodwill, that kind of thing. So, that was a really, again, a unique experience that I'm just, very fortunate to have had fall in my lap.
And it was really neat too, in looking at that. The basketball team won the gold medal, had guys like Kevin Garnett and Gary Payton on it. The baseball team won the gold medal, Ben Sheets, Roy Oswalt, Venus and Serena Williams were also there. So a pretty star-studded event as well.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, Greg, none of that really sticks with me. It's more about just the city and the way people acted. And I always said, and someday I hope to go back, I really want to go back when the Olympics aren't happening, because I want to see if everybody is really this nice in Sydney. I've been told that people are. It wasn't just an Olympic thing, but everybody was in a good mood, and it was neat to be a part of it.
So after the 2001 season, you get an opportunity to go back home to your home state of Texas, full-time gig, pre and post game, and also some play-by-play. I believe Josh Lewin was the guy that would leave on assignment periodically, but you got to do some play-by-play, a really big break for you.
It was a huge break. I remember the Rangers or Eric Nadel had been asking for a copy of my tape, and I was, we were in the middle of that 01 season, and I said, well, I'll get to it. Keep telling my wife, he doesn't need my tape. He's just being nice or whatever. And then I think there was a story. In fact, I think we were in Appleton, and there was a story that came out in the papers in Dallas that there were going to be some changes at the end of the season. And it dawned on me, well, maybe I'd have a chance at sort of working my way into some of those changes. To what degree, I don't know, but so I quickly sent a tape at that point, and again, was fortunate to be a part of that.
Now, for those of us that aren't from Texas, what's a Katie Award?
It's just a local broadcast award. It's fluff filler for somebody's biography, quite frankly. So,
and after 4 years with the Rangers, you land the gig with the Phillies. You do the middle three. Obviously, it goes really well your first year, because then you become the primary radio voice after that. Landing in Philadelphia had to be a pretty big thrill. Great market with a rabid fan base.
Yeah, the thing, I would have loved to have had it work out in Texas. It didn't. Wanted to get back doing games every single day in the big leagues. And, again, the opportunity that came with the Phillies, I ended up there. I ended up there at a good time. I ended up with a partner I like a lot. I ended up with a company, like a group of people to work for and work with that I like a lot. So, you talk about sort of the triple crown. I'm getting lucky again. There's a lot of that involved, and I certainly have been.
Now, you talk about arriving at the right time. I mean, really the heyday of the Phillies, 5 playoff appearances. You're a part of a couple of World Series. You win one against the Rays in 08. You lose one against the Yankees in 09. You got the no-hitter with Roy Halladay in 2010. I mean, what a time. Great memories to be along for that ride.
A lot of great memories. I remember having this conversation with Pat Hughes from the time he left Milwaukee and went to the Cubs, and the Cubs got off to some dreadful start that year, just a terrible start. His first year in the booth as the voice of the Chicago Cubs, and he said you don't underestimate it, because here I am, some new guy on the air, bringing people bad news every single day, and it's a lot easier to broadcast for a winning baseball team than it is one that's struggling or one that's not meeting expectations. And yeah, I got there at the right time. They were on their way up. They had great young players. Obviously, 06 they came really close. They battled for a wild card spot into the final weekend. And then 07 won their first of 5 straight divisions. So, yeah, to say I got there at the right time, that's for sure.
And the first 3 years, you get to broadcast with Harry Callas, perhaps the biggest celebrity in Philadelphia, or one of. What was it like working for him? What kind of influence was he on your broadcast career?
Well, it's funny because I was Harry's break. I worked around him, obviously. But the first year, I was his break. I mean, he would do TV and then come do 1 inning on radio because they wanted to utilize having Harry Callas on the radio broadcast. And then he would take a break in the 4th and 5th, and those are the innings I would do. And then he would go back to TV for the 7th, 8th, and 9th. But I do remember, and I'll never forget, the first day I was on the air, actually my very first game with the Phillies was a spring training game in Kissimmee against the Astros, and I think I went on in the 4th inning, 3rd or 4th inning. We were all shuffling around and everybody was getting some work in, and I went on the air as the color analyst for Harry for an inning, and Ryan Howard hit a home run, and he made his home run call and said, "Out of here," and the goosebumps hit me. And I had known Harry more as a voice of NFL films and voice of the NFL than I had his work with Phillies baseball, just from where I grew up. I mean, his voice was synonymous with the NFL. But to hear it and realize that he's sitting in the chair next to me, it was an amazing thrill.
Now, you and Larry have been partners for some time now, 10 years or thereabouts, and really been embraced by the city. Maybe you're aware of this, maybe you're not. You actually have a Twitter account in your honor, if you've seen that, Franzke in LA.
I've seen it, yeah. That keeps me from having to do Twitter. That's good.
But it just speaks to how you've been embraced by the city and they've kind of welcomed you in. And, that's not always easy to do, and it speaks to your ability because there's been very good broadcasters that have gone into cities where they're not embraced because they're replacing legends. And, I think that speaks volumes to the love of the city that they've shown to you.
Well, the fans have been wonderful, and the city's been wonderful, and the club has been incredibly supportive. Whatever the opposite of guilt by association, I mean, being paired up with Larry Anderson from the start, a tremendously popular player and then analyst, probably helped me a lot. And the fact that we got along and everything, and the fact the team was good. I truly believe that most broadcasters, if given enough time, the fans listening will, come to embrace you, even if they don't right away. I think it was Ernie Harwell who said that, if any announcer gets enough time, if the club is willing to stick with them. So, but somebody told me when I moved to Philadelphia, they said it's the biggest small town you'll ever live in, and they were right. It's been a great place to live, and our kids have been born there, and it's always a two-way street, but I hope to stay there a long, long time.
Well, I could go on and on about broadcasting, but a couple of favorites just real quick. Favorite stadium that you've been to as a broadcaster?
Well, I love our park. I love Citizens Bank Park, not only for the park, but they build it selfishly. They built it with us in mind. I mean, it's a good facility to broadcast from. I still love going to Dodger Stadium. That's a place we get to go every year. I love Fenway Park. We don't get to go there as much being in the other league, but every now and then. But Dodger Stadium is one place for me that you go there, and I still remember going in there the first time and saying, wow, all those years I saw it on TV, it doesn't compare with seeing it in person. And plus we've had some wonderful memories there as the Phillies I still remember the night we, clinched the NL pennant and we're going to the World Series and standing on the field at Dodger Stadium with my wife, and those are kind of moments that'll be there with you forever. So
the favorite city to kind of bump around in?
It's tough to beat New York. I like New York, that I don't have to drive, but walking around and feeling the vibe and the energy of the city. And I love San Francisco. It's picturesque. Really. Honestly, I can find some good in just about every place we go, so I certainly wouldn't want to, put anybody too far down on the list, because there's always something nice to do. It's it's the best job in the world to be able to travel and to do that kind of stuff.
So me being an outsider, when I travel to Philadelphia, where am I going for my cheesesteak? Is it Pat or Gino's?
Oh man, there's so many good places to go. I am not a real big foodie. Like I'm not very discriminating, we'll say. So my recommendation would be to go to the closest one, I guess. Go to the closest one, because there's plenty to do. Heck, go to more than one. Try them all out for yourself. That's what I would recommend.
Perfect. Well, Scott, thanks very much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Our thanks to Scott. Make sure you tune in to Larry Anderson and him all season long on their great radio network, Philadelphia Phillies 94.1 WIP, or at MLB.com, the Game Day audio app. Thanks for watching. I'm Greg Hofer. We'll see you next time.